In sports, victory is often won before the match even begins, and the same is true at selection. More often than not, candidates quit not in the heat of an event, but in anticipation of it. This is a reminder that success at selection isn't solely determined by your performance, but also based on your mental toughness and the preparation and sharpening of your mind leading up to it. So what can you do to avoid crumbling in a moment of weakness? How do you ensure that you perform with focus, confidence, and complete control of your emotions? Let's walk through a mindset framework I've coined called WITS, W-I-T-S, and at the end, I'll share the most damaging training mistake candidates make and how to overcome it. Let's start with identity. Identity matters because your actions fundamentally proceed from it. A runner runs, a swimmer swims, and a businessman goes to work. They do these things every day in alignment with their identity. It's not a chore or even something they think about. Their actions naturally proceed from who they are. When your actions are in alignment with your purpose, the ancient Greeks had a term for this called eudaimonia, often translated as flourishing or fulfillment. The problem arises when you have a goal like getting selected, which requires actions which do not align with your current identity. Why is this a problem? Well, identity is the most powerful impetus for behavioral change. 93% of people fail New Year's resolutions, and a more studied phenomenon is that 90% of those who undergo a diet regain all, if not more, of their weight back. But of the small percentage who beat the odds and transform their life, the common denominator was found to be a change in their identity, how they see themselves. And you see this in great athletes as well. They truly believed they were the best, and their actions and their training reinforce that identity. But before we talk about how to change your identity to reach your goals, I want you to ask yourself, who are you? And I mean really, who are you? It's easy to say you're a tough guy who will never quit, but in your weakest, most vulnerable moment, when you're tired, exhausted, and every organ in your body is screaming at you to quit, who are you then? Yes, you can have multiple identities, a father, a son, a student, but there are more pernicious identities that lie deep inside us, which may be covered in dust and you want to forget about. The procrastinator, the bum, the quitter in you. He will be the loudest in those vulnerable moments. The way you destroy the worst aspects of yourself and forge a new identity starts with understanding who you need to become, and a few traits immediately come to mind. Being hardworking, disciplined, and courageous, but you don't just snap your fingers and become that way. Like anything in life, it's something you earn through hard work. Dorothy Rowe stated, "Depression is like a prison, where you are both the suffering prisoner and the cruel jailer." In many ways, life is that way. Today, you are confined like a prisoner by your own beliefs, fears, and self-perception. You can be coached and guided to freedom, but only you have the ability to change your life. After you've identified who you need to become and that your greatest obstacle is in fact yourself, your next step is earning, yes, earning, the responsibility to take on that identity. The reason I say earning is because liberation from your mental prison is not a right. Instead, it requires purposeful action, which will prove to yourself, more than to anyone else, that you are capable of overcoming the barriers you've constructed. These purposeful actions are the T in WITS. For training, I recommend you start with small wins, aligning your daily habits with the person you want to become. Simple ones, like sleeping 7 hours minimum each night, eating right, and sticking to a training schedule. These are all the bare minimum activities to align your actions with your desired identity. Once you've done this for 50 days, even on days when you didn't want to, one day soon you will wake up and realize that you're not training because it's a chore, but instead because it's an expression of your new self. And every day you train beyond then will reinforce your new identity even more. It's during this time you reach a flow state. You're making progress from session to session. You feel confidence in what you've achieved and the continued progress that you'll make. And each great training session compounds, and it only increases your hunger to do more and improve. But to reach that state of eudaimonia, or flourishing, it requires taking your first step. And when you're starting at step 0, going from 0 to 1 feels like a massive leap, but it's one you need to take, because as long as you stay at 0, doing nothing, you're only going to get worse. It's for this reason the Bible verse, "To those who have everything, much will be given, and to those with nothing, everything will be taken," is particularly salient. You need to take your first step. Once you do, it will have a snowball effect, and it's at that point you have direction and the ability to chase your goals. But if you do nothing, if you stay at 0, your situation will only get worse. Remember, The best day to start was yesterday, and the next best is today. As you continue with training, and even into the pipeline, you may experience a moment of existential questioning and ask why. You plan your sleep, train 10 to 15 hours per week, you suffer in the gym, and you put in hard work, all while others are relaxing. And for what? It's during this moment, when you question your purpose, that you need a why. This is the W in WITS. I've worked with a few candidates who dropped their contract within weeks, and one even days prior to their ship date. Both were physical studs. One in particular I think about who ran a comfortable sub 35 5 mile, rocked sub 1230 miles, and would do a back offset of deadlifts with 315 for 10 plus reps. He was more than prepared, but beyond the physical side of training, he was also far and away one of the most consistent guys I've worked with. So that's why I was so surprised when he decided the Army wasn't for him. And while I was personally momentarily disappointed, I do recognize his why just wasn't enough. And I'm not saying he quit. I'm saying he weighed the pros and cons and realized it didn't make sense for him. I want you to make this decision now, while you're preparing, so you have no questions and no doubt about your why once you get to the actual training. And to be clear, it's okay to decide the military isn't for you. It's far from the only path to fulfillment, but it's important to make your decision in a moment of calm and clarity, and not while you're exhausted and in a moment of weakness. A tip for creating your why is to visualize your future self, the one who achieved what you wanted to do. He may be you 5, 10, or 20 years from now. Talk to him and ask, why did you go down this path? Was it worth it? Is it worth the commitment, the pain, the suffering I will have to undergo? And if he tells you it's worth it, write down your why, and then make a promise to your future self that you won't let him down. And if he tells you it's not worth it, and it's not what you want out of life, great, you saved yourself a lot of time, but you should still get in shape and train hard. Being a civilian or pursuing another career path is no excuse to be a slob or avoid hard things. Throughout every difficult task in your life, you will benefit from segmentation, which is the S in WITS. Segmentation means dividing something into component pieces, and in the context of selection or training for it, this is valuable because it allows us to take a gargantuan task like going from fat to selected, or even a challenging workout, and breaking it into smaller achievable pieces. The truth is, no matter how confident you are in your identity, your training, or your why, you will be challenged physically and mentally. And when you line up for that unknown distance ruck, and the devil on your shoulder says it's too hard, you didn't train enough, and you'd be better off giving up now. Those are all thoughts which creep in your head because of the fear of the unknown. In the same way a child is afraid of the dark, your mind sees an unknown task and assumes the worst. Recognize that these are intrusive thoughts, and they're normal. And while they can be fleeting with the right mental strategy, you need to recognize that these thoughts come from your lizard brain, the primitive part geared towards avoiding pain and ensuring survival. So this is normal, but with segmentation, you can overcome this. First, remind yourself what you're doing is something thousands of candidates have overcome, and neither you nor them are that special. Second, have trust in yourself and your training, and rather than focusing on the unknown distance, just make it to the next landmark, count your steps, and stack those small wins to build your confidence. My bonus tip for this video is to take your training seriously, because the consequences of quitting in your everyday workouts is much greater than you think. We all know the old man who wakes up at 4:30 every day out of habit. This was developed from years of working in the mines, farming, or other work, and we all intuitively understand he grew to become that way through habit. At the start, it wasn't easy. He wasn't born that way, but over time it became part of who he is. And for whatever reason, we don't recognize our habits and instincts when you wake up. Your mindset, whether you quit or persevere in hard workouts. Each of these are muscles, and if you consistently give up on yourself in training, you're training yourself to quit. But the flip side of that is if you train like a champion, who pushes harder and grows mentally stronger in the face of adversity, you actually train yourself to win. I hope you found the WITS framework for mental toughness helpful. If you did, give the video a thumbs up. And to learn how hard Special Forces training is, check out the video on the screen.